Okay, I originally posted this on my blog, but nobody reads that, so I thought I'd make a video instead. Recently, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, has appeared in the press making some very silly statements about gay marriage, whatever. The link is on the bottom of this video here if you want to check them out, but this is my considered reply. Dear Mr. George Carey, I write as one of those many hundreds of sodomites Christians are so fond of talking about. I use the term advisedly as, although personally I have never sodomized anybody myself, or would even want to in any other but fantasy terms, I'm given it to understand it makes it easier for Christians to handle the delicate issue in a sensitive, thoughtful way if I use such terminology. No doubt were I in fact an AIDS-carrying, rampantly promiscuous child molester, it would make their lives even easier for them as well. Sadly, I have to confess, and aside from a couple of casual encounters and a lot of heartache caused by falling in love with people incapable of understanding my affections, that I am largely celibate. I do hope this does not upset you too much. It certainly seems to have no effect on how your brethren regard me anyway. Anyway, I'm writing simply to remind you that you've now retired from public office, and that you should perhaps curl up in a chair with a copy of Eusebius, pipe and slippers, before making a further nonsense of yourself in public. You claim that Christians are being persecuted and discriminated against because of their beliefs. Surely you mean that some people have been subject to negative court decisions because their actions in regard to those beliefs were profoundly discriminatory, such as the relationships guidance official who refused to handle gay couples because his holy book told them they were evil and that it rubs off if you go within 30 feet of them. I feel pretty sure the position outlined by Voltaire in his philosophical dictionary, that believing the Pope to be the Antichrist is not in itself a sufficient cause for prosecution, but somebody who has that belief and then goes on to murder somebody should be prosecuted. I understand that's still part of our UK constitutional tradition anyway. What I find so puzzling about your latest outpourings is that you seem to be saying on the one hand that discriminating against people on the grounds of their beliefs is wrong. Now I agree with that, and yet on the other you defend the rights to discriminate against people like me. What exactly is it makes it acceptable for some kinds of bigotry to remain respectable? The literal belief that the world was made in 7 days does not automatically qualify one for spiritual authority after all. More likely it would qualify for a place in a local mental hospital. However, I'm prepared to tolerate the belief itself, as I'm quite a broad-minded chappie with an interest in mythical anthropology. Looking at the examples you give here of crass discrimination, I can hardly see any case here that would merit the people involved either hanging themselves, Jamie Roadmeyer 14 from his garden swing set, Philip Parker 14 from his bedroom light fitting, taking overdoses, Jamie Hubley 15, or even shooting themselves, Asher Brown 13. So where is this great humanity? Where is this shocking persecution you speak of? Where are all these evangelical suicides? Where are the bodies of those unable to wear crucifixes at work? After all, you state that persecution is just as bad as it is for homosexuals, so please let's see some corpses here. The fact is, there aren't any, are there? Unlike the nonsense people of your ilk spout, the body count is minimal. The problem here, Mr. Carey, is not only that you are making statements that are patently untrue and exaggerated, but you are alienating many people who would be sympathetic to your cause. I, for example, believe in marriage. I believe it to be a healthy, stabilising force in society, a rite of passage marking some form of personal development / achievement, a symbolic gesture of mutual giving and devotion, a much-needed oasis of stability in the world of drifting shadows, which is why I believe it should be open for gay people as well as straight people. It will provide gay kids with something to aspire to in their lives. It will grant their lives a social undergirding, which at the moment they are obliged to find for themselves in the face of hostility, not only from people in the street, but damnably from people like you in pulpits, who really should know better about such things, as the parable of the unforgiving servant should demonstrate. You speak as though marriage is and has been some kind of solid bedrock throughout the centuries, but even a cursory glance at the writings of the Church Fathers indicates that position to be a sham. You no longer speak about or preach about conjugal purity being the Christian ideal. You allow for non-procreational sex within marriage, both of which would have been seen as heretical blasphemy by the early Church. Likewise, marriage is no longer simply viewed as a business contract where virginity is prized as being of greater value in greater value in terms of a dowry, and we no longer live in a country where, according to Montesquieu's spirits of the laws, 7-year-old girls are obliged to choose their husband. So on what real grounds are you making your objections? The argument for biblical authority is redundant. Indeed, if that were to be the sole measure of ethics, then slavery would not have been abolished in the first place. The argument from history is, as I've just demonstrated, equally fallacious and unsupportable. So where are these objections coming from? What exactly are you so scared of? What about the argument from Trust is Truth and Mercy? The argument that says everybody deserves to have a fulfilling life, except that their actions cause direct harm to others, like Christians do to children like the Robemeyers and Hobleys of this world. What about the argument that states any ethical position that causes more misery, pain, and needless negativity in people than happiness is simply not worthy of being upheld? Mr. Carey, please wake up and smell the coffee. The world has changed an awful lot since the 4th century. Appeasing the prejudices of Middle England will only carry you so far. The rest will happen of its own accord. Go to Wipe Out Homophobia on Facebook and look at all those photos of happy gay couples who have tied the knots after years of living together unrecognised and persecuted by people of your ilk. Then Google the YouTube videos of Jamie Robemeyer and Jamie Hobley and watch the beautiful little lads your kind drove to suicide and still are doing so. And if after that you still believe what you hold as being right is justified and ethical, then I can only say I'm glad you're now in retirement. Yours faithfully, a sodomite.